Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Namaskar. You have stepped into a course that is going to change the way that you look at data. Not just how you analyze it, but also how you communicate it. My name is Nivid Desai. I serve as the Program Executive at Writing Studio IIT Gandhinagar. Welcome to Writing for Data Science. This course is at the intersection of analysis and communication. As all of us know, data analysis is not just about coding and models. It is about solving real-world problems. And that is exactly why every single thought that goes into solving those problems needs to be communicated. And not just to one audience, across multiple stakeholders. That is where this course comes in. This course prepares you with the foundations of writing, especially curated for data science. We will discuss audience analysis, critical thinking, logical reasoning, as well as storytelling that is native to data science. So join me on a journey at the intersection of numbers and narratives. I'll see you in class. Namaskar, hello and welcome to Writing for Data Science. My name is Nivid Desai and we are on a journey of exploring the interesting intersections of numbers and narratives. In the past two lectures, we have observed the structure of how we design our information and communication for two separate sets of audience, technical and non-technical audiences. Both of these, I can term them as stakeholders within our communication in data science. So today's lecture is about addressing the stakeholders' concerns in data science. Let me take a moment to explain to you the relevance of this entire theme. You see, when anyone picks up a piece written by us, any document, could it be technical, it could be non-technical. Anyone picks up a piece of our writing, they expect some information already before they start to read it, right? They would have some need, some utility of the information that we have catered to them. Now, in this case, it behooves us that we try to understand their concerns. We try to empathize with the kind of things that they are bringing to the table and reverse engineer our writing to accommodate the concerns so we can cater the information in the best possible way. That's why the stakeholder concerns are important to be understood and addressed by any data science communicator, especially within the medium of writing. So today, we will look at different stakeholders in the general realm of data science, both technical and non-technical, and we will try to see how we can develop an intuition to understand and address the concerns that these stakeholders would have when they come on board to interact with our written documents. Let's first understand the definition of stakeholders within data science. A stakeholder is any individual or group that has an interest in a data science project, whether they are involved in decision making, funding, implementation, or impact assessment. Stakeholders are broadly classified into technical and non-technical categories based on their expertise and the role in the project. So you see, we are swimming in familiar territories. We have already looked at technical and non-technical categories as audiences. Now we are graduating to the next step of looking at them as stakeholders, trying to evaluate the stake that they have in our analysis and our predictions, and augmenting our communication to accommodate their concerns as stakeholders. This is an entire lecture designed around understanding technical and non-technical stakeholders and how can we address the kind of concerns they bring to our table. But before we begin, I would like you to take a moment and reflect on this question. Think of a real-world data project that you have encountered, like a company using AI for hiring, for an example. Who do you think the stakeholders are? Maybe you can bring the format and the structure of technical and non-technical audiences that we have understood and try to derive a list of stakeholders based on a kind of imagined scenario that you are coming up with. So take a minute, take out your notebook, and draw a list of all the stakeholders that you think would be involved in your real world data project that you have encountered. I'll see you again. Now let us begin exploring the difference of technical and non-technical stakeholders. Technical stakeholders have expertise in data science, machine learning, statistics, or software engineering. They understand the technical methodologies and focus on accuracy, efficiency, and performance. These are some examples of technical stakeholders. First of all, we have data scientists. Data scientists would be interested in model performance and robustness. Then there would be engineers or developers. They would be concerned with scalability and implementation. Then we have researchers. They will evaluate methodologies and algorithmic improvements. All three of them are examples of technical stakeholders. They are not just audiences. They will have some role to play. Once again, I must emphasize this as clearly as I can. Therefore, it is important to understand that we are not only looking at them as audiences, but as roles, as stakeholders. Because when we try to reimagine them based on their functionalities, we would see them with the different concerns that they are bringing on table while interacting with our data communication. Let's now look at the characteristics of technical stakeholders. Technical stakeholders prefer precise, detailed, and data-backed explanations. They are interested in reproducibility and transparency. We have talked about both of these aspects in detail in the previous lectures. I hope that we carry the knowledge that we have built into this segment as well. Technical stakeholders often require technical documentation, model specification, and error analysis. Why? Look at the previous point. They are more interested in reproducibility and transparency. Therefore, all of these details, technical documentation, model specification, and error analysis will be relevant for the kind of concerns that they have. Here's an example scenario. A data scientist reviewing a fraud detection model will want details about the precision recall trade-off, feature selection, and algorithm tuning, rather than a simplified explanation of how well it works. That's not what they are interested in. They would look at the kind of intricate analysis and the intricate algorithms which have gone into making this model possible. That's what the concern of a data scientist would be. Therefore, try to augment your entire communication to match the kind of level of curiosity that a data scientist brings to the table while interacting with your communication. Now, let's look at the non-technical stakeholders. Non-technical stakeholders do not have a deep understanding of data science, but they play a crucial role in decision making, funding, or implementation. We have already discussed this at depth that non-technical stakeholders do not necessarily mean a lesser educated or a lesser relevant size of the audience. These are people who may not have a deep technical advanced knowledge, but they would have the utility of the insights and recommendations that your analysis brings to the table, because they would be more inclined towards the decision-making side rather than the technical side. They focus on business impact, ethical concerns, and usability. the practical feasibility of your analysis and modeling is more concerned with the non-technical side. Let's look at some non-technical stakeholder examples. For example, any executive or business leader is a non-technical stakeholder. They need insights for decision making. In that case, decision making is their stake. For example, marketing teams. Marketing teams use your insights for customer targeting. Then there are policymakers and regulators. They are more concerned about the ethical implications and compliance. So on all three fronts, the executive fronts, the business development front, and the legal compliance, policy compliance front, all three of them are part of the same audience of non-technical audience, but they have different stakes. They bring with them different concerns. Therefore, we must augment our communication to suit the concerns that they are bringing to our level of communication. Let's look at some characteristics of non-technical stakeholders. They would prefer clear, high-level explanations without excessive technical jargon. They would not know how to have a contextual understanding of any technical term. So, it is important that we avoid using any jargon while talking to a non-technical stakeholder. They would want to know how findings impact business goals, customer experience, or operational efficiency. All of these are clear indicators of the stake that they have and the concerns that they have. As far as the style of communication is concerned, the non-technical stakeholders require visuals like dashboards, summaries, and key insights rather than raw statistical models. It is important that we augment our communication not only to their stakes and their concerns, but also their preferred way of receiving information. Here's an example scenario. A CEO wants to know how a churn prediction model affects revenue. Once again, he doesn't want to know about the model. He wants to know how it affects revenue. They are not interested in the specific algorithm used, like I told you, but in how many customers are likely to leave and what actions can reduce the churn. This is the kind of scenario which will suit a non-technical communication. Now that we have seen the examples of technical and non-technical stakeholders, understood their characteristics, and seen the kind of scenarios that might arise while putting them in the context of the concerns that they bring to the table, let's arrive at the actual strategies and approaches that we can practice while augmenting our entire communication for both of these respective sides. Let's begin with the technical stakeholders first. Here are some strategies and approaches while designing our communication. You use precise technical terminology and detailed explanations. You provide code snippets, equations, and references to methodologies. You include performance metrics, statistical significance, and reproducibility details. You discuss model limitations and sources of bias transparently. All of these would be the concerns of the technical side, and therefore we address all of them by ensuring that we include these details in our writing. Think about it. You are a technical stakeholder picking up a document and you have these thoughts going on in your mind. Will it be reproducible? Will it be transparent? Will it have all the technical details about equations and references to methodologies, any kind of detailed explanation that I might need to understand the analysis? And lo and behold, when you turn the page, the detail is right there. That is the foresight of a well-thought communication design for a technical stakeholder. That is what we mean by addressing the concerns of our respective stakeholders. Here's an example. Our predictive model uses a gradient boosting algorithm with hyperparameter tuning via Bayesian optimization. The model achieves an AUC-ROC score of 0.92, outperforming logistic regression by 15%. However, class imbalance remains a challenge, necessitating smoot-based resampling. In these 3 or 4 sentences, once again, try and identify what bits of information are included. The problem statement, the methodology, the kind of tools being used, the kind of results being achieved, and the limitations, as well as the kind of transparency that it is trying to communicate. I'll flash this passage for you for 30 seconds. Please try and identify the components that these 3 or 4 short sentences contain within themselves. I hope that we could successfully locate the different bits of information. Now that you've done that, here's a quick exercise. Take the following non-technical explanation and rewrite it for a data scientist. Our model helps predict customer churn with high accuracy using past purchasing patterns to identify at-risk customers. Take 2 minutes, try and augment this entire passage for a technical stakeholder like a data scientist. I'll see you again. We just explored the strategies and approaches for technical stakeholders. Now we need to arrive at the strategies and approaches of non-technical stakeholders. While communicating with non-technical stakeholders, we use simple, results-focused language with real-world implications. We emphasize business value and actionable insights. We replace technical jargon with analogies and visual aids. And we present key takeaways before diving into supporting details. The analogies part, I want to spend some time thinking about it. Analogies means comparisons. Comparing something technical, comparing something abstract to a real world scenario. Right? So for example, if you want to explain what an algorithm does, what a search algorithm does, for example, you can take the example of a dictionary and trying to look at a particular word within the dictionary. And while you look for that word, what kind of logic would be going on in your mind? You would arrive at the first letter of the word, then you will arrive at the second letter of the word, and then so on and so forth, you will find the word that you're looking for. This is the analogy of an algorithm. While I try to explain the algorithm for a technical audience, I will not use this. The kind of explanation will be different. But for a non-technical audience, this will immediately help them click. This will immediately help them connect with a real-world experience that they have had and connect it with the theoretical explanation of what an algorithm does. Once again, they are more interested in the utility of an algorithm. So when you say a search algorithm, they know exactly what the algorithm does, not what the algorithm is or how it was created. Therefore, analogies and visual aids always work for a non-technical audience. And then you always prioritize key takeaways and recommendations before diving into any kind of supporting details. Whenever a non-technical audience is picking up a piece of writing, what they are looking for is the recommendations and key takeaways from your analysis that concerns their entire scope of work. So it is our job to put them up at the front, to give them priority, to give them a prime position in our communication and expect the curiosities that the non-technical audience will bring to our documentation. Here's an example. Our model identifies customers who are likely to cancel their subscription. By sending them personalized offers, we can reduce churn by 15%, increasing revenue by $2 million annually. If you notice this, there is no jargon at all. The entire language is directed towards business, it is precise, it is specific, it gives them the figures that they want, and it also gives them the kind of projected results which will emerge if the recommendation is put into implementation. Now here's something that I would like you to reflect on. How would you simplify a technical report about algorithm bias for a business leader? I just gave you an example about describing algorithm with an analogy. Now try to do the same thing with algorithm bias, but in this case I have also specified the role that the non-technical stakeholder is playing, the business leader. So think about the concerns that they might have. Think about the perspective that they will bring to your report. So how would you do it? How would you simplify an algorithm bias for a business leader? Think about it, maybe make some notes. I will see you in a minute. Now we will go through two scenarios quickly about how this kind of shift in different stakeholder communication will arrive in the real world. The first scenario is explaining model performance to a CTO, a Chief Technical Officer, versus a CEO, a Chief Executive Officer. As you may have noticed, the CTO is quite obviously a technical stakeholder, and the CEO is a non technical stakeholder. Both of them have a key role to play in organizational development. But if you are a data scientist communicating with the CTO, your tone, your priority, your arrangement of information will be radically different as compared to communicating with a CEO. Let's look at this with an example. Let's see what the communication to the CTO might look like, since the CTO is a technical stakeholder. We trained a convolutional neural network on 1 million labeled images. The model achieved 95% accuracy with a 3% false positive rate. Hyperparameter tuning improved performance by 8% over the baseline. The CTO would understand this. The CTO would want this information. That's the difference between augmenting information according to not only the literacy, not only the technical expertise of the audience, but also the preferred nature of information. This is the CTO's concern. This is the CTO's stake. Therefore, it is important to not only look at our audiences by the functionality, but the role that they play within an organization. In contrast, let's look at the CEO, the non-technical stakeholder. Our AI model correctly identifies products in customer photos 95% of time. This will enhance user experience and reduce manual tagging costs by 30%. The CEO is obviously interested in business development, in business expansion. So, the kind of model that you have developed as a data scientist, how does it benefit the concerns that the CEO bring to the table? That is how you augment your communication. That's the difference between communicating to a technical stakeholder and a non-technical stakeholder. In both of these cases, you have aptly and correctly addressed the concerns and stakes that their roles have in a certain given organization. I would like you to look at this for a moment. I'll hold this slide for a minute. Compare both of these examples and look at the difference in style and the manner of information that we have catered. Now let's look at another example, another scenario. presenting ethical concerns to policymakers versus data engineers. Now we are taking up the non-technical stakeholders first. The policymakers are chiefly concerned with the ethical concerns. That is the stake that they have in an organization. Versus a data engineer may be passively concerned about the ethical concerns. So let's look at how we will first prioritize this information for the non-technical stakeholder. Our hiring algorithm shows bias against female applicants. Without intervention, it could lead to unfair hiring practices and legal risks. This does not have any jargon, but it clearly lays out a problem that is ethical, a problem that concerns the policymaker. Now, let's look at what the data engineer needs to know as the technical stakeholder. Feature importance analysis indicates that gender-related attributes contribute to biased model predictions. We recommend adversarial debiasing or reweighting techniques to mitigate this effect. This insight is born out of data analysis. Now, you want to communicate this in a manner that solves this problem. To a policymaker, you are communicating in a manner that makes them aware of this problem. So the ethical concerns are addressed by the policymaker, while the technical concerns are addressed by the data engineer. Both of them have stakes, both of them have a role to play, and both of them are catered suitable information according to their roles because you were aware about the concerns that they brought to the table. Once again, I would like to hold this slide for 1 minute for you to compare both these examples and see the dynamism that enters communication as soon as you start identifying what concerns do these stakeholders bring to the table. Now let's take a moment to reflect on this one question. Why should ethical concerns be framed differently for different audiences? It's slightly counterintuitive, don't you think? Everybody is concerned with ethics. Everybody gets affected similarly with ethics. So, for technical audience and non-technical audiences, why should these kinds of communication even differ? Why should they be framed differently? The clue is in our previous slides. I hope that you have seen both of these examples closely. So, reflect on this for a moment, take some notes. I'll get back to you. As we tie the whole thing together, I would like to share some key takeaways with you in conclusion. Understanding stakeholder concerns is crucial in data science projects. Technical stakeholders require precision and transparency, while non-technical stakeholders need actionable insights without any excessive complexity. Effective communication ensures that findings are understood, accepted, and used to drive meaningful impact. In today's lecture, the key skill that we have learned is to take the role of any audience member into account, because it is their role and responsibility that makes them a stakeholder with concerns. Until now, we were only looking at them as members of the audience that we are catering our information to. In today's class, we started looking at them from an organizational point of view, from a role-based point of view, because all of them, depending on the role that they have within an organization or an institution, have some stake in the kind of communication that we are catering them. It could be a technical stake, it could be a non-technical stake, and depending on their stakes, they would have different concerns. And our job is to augment our communication to address those concerns. We also looked at some strategies to make sure that we do that as effectively as possible. In the end, I would like you to leave with an exercise. Think of a real-world example from your discipline where data insights had a major impact. Write a short note explaining it in two versions, one for a technical audience and one for a non-technical audience. I would like you to choose independently what kind of a role you would define for a technical audience and for a non-technical audience. You are free to decide the kind of role, but the communication needs to be augmented based on those roles and the concerns that come with it. So that was it from my side. In today's lecture, we looked at understanding stakeholder concerns and the kind of approaches and strategies that we can use in our writing to address those concerns. I hope that we had fun with all these exercises and reflection questions that we targeted in today's lecture. It was an important lesson to learn, so please carry this knowledge forward in the other lectures that we explore in our ongoing module on audience analysis. I'll see you in the next class. Until then, stay curious, keep learning. All the best. Namaskar.